What is good, everybody out there? Thanks for checking into another episode of Court Thoughts, channel where we basically talk basketball. And today, we're doing another tea talk. Let's get into it. All right, so the one I got today, I got pearl milk tea. I can't say anything more about it. If you never had any of these bubble teas or boba or whatever you guys call them, in different places I know that they call them different things, but here in Australia we call them bubble teas. If you never had one, pearl milk tea is the go-to for me. If you're going to try one for the first time, you want to try this one out. So here's what we got. Gong Cha, same place, my favourite. All right, so on today's episode of Tea Talk, what are we going to talk about? Well, Ben Simmons, I'm coming for that ass. Let's get into it. All right, so to get into the thick of it, for me, my biggest gripe when it comes to Ben Simmons overall is, I'd have to say, as an Australian, seeing players who are really, really good want to represent their country is always a great thing to see. And in the last two Olympics, we've seen circumstances where he's chosen to pull out and not want to participate in the Olympics. Now, why is that a big deal? Australia, for the most part, doesn't have a tremendously rich basketball history. For me, being a 90s kid, growing up in Australia, basketball went through a little bit of a boom, but for the most part, it is not a tremendously big sport here in Australia. And so to see players who are exceptionally skilled, exceptionally talented players, and are all-stars in the greatest league in the world, not want to represent their country is something that leaves me with a little bit of a foul taste in my mouth. Now, the first instance that he decided not to participate was in the 2016 Summer Olympics. He chose that he wasn't going to participate because he was trying to focus on his rookie season. Now, I guess thinking about players that played in the recent Olympics, we had Josh Giddey, who recently signed with the Oklahoma Thunder and was drafted 7th overall. With Josh Giddey being someone who participated in the Olympics just recently in Japan and still being able to prepare for his rookie season was one of the things where it's like, well, I know that this is after the fact, but it's a perfect example of how it can be done. I think about the type of player that he is and the style of player that he is, and I think about how advantageous it would have been to the Australian national team for him to be able to play and represent him, to put that name on his back and to kind of show how good the country is at the game. Thinking about the type of player that he is and how skilled he is for his size and the way that he plays, I think about how much of an asset he is to the national team and being able to try and show how much Australian basketball has developed over the years. We've had a number of people progress through from playing in Australia or made the jump straight across into playing in the NBA without having to make a name for themselves here in Australia playing in the NBL, which is our equivalent of the NBA. And it's one of those things where it's really quite frustrating to see someone not have as much of a passion about representing their country and being more focused about developing their name. When we look at the recent situation with the Olympics, he originally elected that he was going to play in Japan, It was obviously quite some time. Prior to that, it was in 2017. And obviously a number of things have transpired across that period of time, him developing his game, him participating in the finals, and then obviously his recent experience in the 2021 season, not going to the expectation of what he thought that he was going to perform at, I guess, led him to want to pull out of the Olympics again and decide that, well, he was going to work on his game. Now, taking a moment just to talk about his game. He, as I mentioned before, is someone who is exceptionally skilled for his size. If you think about him as a player, there isn't a tremendous amount of people that are hovering around the 6'11" mark. I believe he's 6'11", he might be 6'10", that has passing skills and the visibility across the court and the capability to make on-point passes the way he does. And the people that I think about when I consider having that type of passing ability, that have played those types of guard positions, I think of people like LeBron James and Magic Johnson. Other than that, there isn't really a lot of guys that are guards or have played as guards or played that sort of point forward position that are in that sort of size and that capability. Now, obviously, the closest comparison that you have to that type of passing game is LeBron James. Magic Johnson was way more of a pure point guard, in my opinion, than you think about someone like LeBron James or the way that Ben Simmons plays. A lot of comparisons have been made in that way to it before, so it really shouldn't be surprising to hear that type of comparison. The things that I find that are really frustrating additionally is every year it seems to be the case that he catfishes the media, catfishes people by going out there, and he'll show highlight videos of him working in the off season, and his jump shot will be wet and he's hitting it from everywhere. But all of a sudden he gets into the system, playing in his team system, and it doesn't work out. Does that necessarily warrant him to want to leave the team? Well, there could be a number of things for him to want to leave the team. And I remember watching a previous podcast with Jimmy Butler, where he was sitting down with JJ Redick, and they were talking about the dynamics of playing on that team together. And they did talk a lot, quite candidly, about the fact that the team felt quite dysfunctional. When you think about someone like Ben Simmons being the type of player that he is and being in the limelight, it's a real big blessing to play alongside someone like Joel Embiid. And you would think on paper that those two guys would be able to coexist. But for whatever reason, the team's not playing in a way that it's his liking, and he wants to move. Where's he going to move? There's been rumors about different places that he may potentially go and sign to, but who knows? It's really quite interesting as well from an outsider to look at how some of these professional players react to situations in the team and being real quick to want to jump and leave, like jump ship. And some of the greats have been very candid about their desire to want to pick up and move. Kobe Bryant is an example of it, but did he ever do it? No. Stayed where he was and played his career out. And I think that that's really not as common as what it used to be. It's much more common now to see people pick up and leave and bounce around teams. On his game development, I think it's fair to say his biggest strong suits when we think about his game is, like I mentioned, his passing ability, but also his driving ability. And being left-handed makes it a lot more awkward because of the fact that it's not that common that there is left-handed shooters, and it has this little jarring moment where, as a defender, you're defending them and you're not expecting them to go in a particular direction. A lot of the time, as a younger player, and even as an adult playing, it's quite common that you'll hear people say, force a defender left. Well, in that sort of situation, you're going to force on the opposite side. Now, his strong suits being in that passing ability and that driving ability, but his performance shooting from the free throw line or having a mid-range is really not that good. And publicly, he's been clowned on for his three-point shooting ability in previous times. I don't understand why someone who is a professional athlete with the capability to have access to professional trainers in helping you develop your shot and fine-tune and tweak your shooting ability, the resources and finance to be able to designate the right support network around you to help you move forward. So not necessarily just a shooting coach, but getting into scrimmage situations, or being able to have people being able to pay for specific types of training that the average Joe can't. Realistically, he has enough money to be able to pay for any of the best professional coaches out there to help him develop his game. Is that going to help him if he moves to another city? Maybe not. Being in Philadelphia, it is a pretty big city, so it's going to allow him to have the frequency of getting access to different things, and not that he can't have that in smaller market teams, but it just makes a lot more sense that you would want to stay in those big hub areas. And it's one of those situations as well, when you think about players and when they sign and they move to other teams, it's not that common for a player to want to openly move and live in a small market city. I'll give you an example, Indiana. Teams don't pick up and want to live in a city like Indiana because there's nothing really as enticing for them to want to do outside of play basketball, or maybe it doesn't give them the type of lifestyle that they're accustomed or used to. That's why you see a lot of star players and a lot of players, when they're looking to move, they do consider things like the location where they're playing. That's why it's not surprising to see people move towards places like California as a state, moving across to the East Coast and playing in cities like Chicago, playing in Philadelphia, playing in New York. There's a ton of money that gets put into those big market locations, and that then gives them the capability to have more of a draw for support. So if you were to put yourself in Ben Simmons' shoes, why would you want to leave an area like that unless there's something that we don't know? I'm not really going to speculate on anything else other than what I can see. And what I can see is that, well, him moving and wanting to move away from the team is only doing himself a disservice. The same way him not performing or wanting to be a part of the Olympics team is him doing a disservice to himself and being able to develop his game better. Coming back to that last statement about him doing a disservice in not playing in the Olympics, let's look at Patty Mills. Patty Mills is a great player, in my opinion, and I'm actually really excited to see him move to Brooklyn to potentially get a different type of role than what he was playing in San Antonio. And he's one of those guys where I'm surprised that he hasn't had the capability to kind of push out of the system a little bit. However, it's not surprising, knowing the way that coaches like Greg Popovich play, that they're very system orientated and they really don't allow players to really flex outside of that. And when they do, they don't stay. Perfect example, Kawhi Leonard. Now, looking at his performance in the recent Olympics, he was able to show his scoring repertoire and his skill set that he has in the bag to be able to put buckets up, but to be a really crafty player. And he is a crafty player, and he's a very effective player. So that for me is a big reason why it's really exciting to see him move in that way. I think that there was an opportunity lost from Ben Simmons in wanting to not play in the Olympics because of the fact that, well, think about how much publicity players like Patty Mills got when they played in the Olympics and they played really well. It could have been a real good opportunity to flip the script and show how capable he is and in playing in that system. And really, it would have been, as I mentioned before, a really big asset to the national team. But even more so, if you were to think about it on a greedy perspective, well, to himself. Recently, I've been watching a lot of videos from people like Shaq giving their opinion about him. Shaq is a notoriously opinionated person when it comes to various aspects within the game of basketball, whether it be performance capabilities of big men or style of play. And he's been exceptionally close-minded about the development of certain ways that the game gets played. But I'm not surprised. The guy has several championship rings, and he has the power to be able to show it off and say, well, listen, you can't tell me shit because do you have one of these? Oh my God! If they don't, they're going to shut their mouth. Now, I would really like to see someone like Ben Simmons turn their career around from this opportunity. Is this the end of days when it comes to his career? Absolutely not. The guy's an absolute freak. He's really good. He's a really good player. And arguably, it's quite possible that you could say that he's going to be an all-star again for a number of years to come. Can he make that jump from good to great? Absolutely. Does he need to invest in himself? Yes. But what's missing? I think confidence. If you're not confident, you're not going to shoot. You're not going to let it fly. And you're going to have hitches in your game because you're not going to get yourself to that position that you want to be to shoot from that spot. Or you're not going to have the confidence to be able to pull up and shoot over people. I think he could really take a page out of someone like KD's book, being as tall as what he is, where he can just pull up and shoot over the top of someone. And he knows that most people aren't going to be able to get a hand to it. If he develops an outside shot or even a decent mid-range shot, it opens up that driving ability a lot more. There's something that's really interesting that I came across where if you are a really good passer, your passing is your weapon. If you're a really good passer and drive player, where you can drive and finish closer to the bucket, they have to respect both options. They have to respect your ability to drive to the basket and your ability to pass. That then makes it hard. Are you going to start by passing or are you going to start by driving? Or will you start by passing and then create a drive where you fake a pass and drive? Or are you going to drive and then look to dish out? Now, it's not two options. It actually ends up being four. Might be a little bit confusing, but if you think about it like that, that's the most simplistic way. Now imagine what it will be like if you introduce a jump shot. They're not respecting his jump shot. Imagine if they have to. It's going to create a whole lot more opportunities for his organic game to progress. I'd really like to know what you guys think when it comes into the situation with Ben Simmons. Is there something else that you think that I've missed? Or do you think I'm wrong? Jump in the comments, let me know. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for today's episode of Court Thoughts, T-Talk edition. Listen, at the end of the day, these guys are freaks of nature, and being in the position that they are, where they are in a public forum and being as big of a player that they are, they have to have thick skin. I don't think that there's anything outstandingly critical that I've said of him other than he needs to invest in himself and show what he's capable of. And I hope that with the future coming and him still being quite young in his career, that he looks at this constructively. Obviously, it's a bit pompous to think that he's going to look at my video, but I hope that he looks at his game constructively and sees the opportunities for him to get better and doesn't rest on his current strengths and really thinks about maybe being one of the greatest Australian basketball players of all time by pushing that game forward. Anyways, stay safe. Until next time, take care. Peace. What's good? Thanks for checking out the video. I hope you liked it. Please make sure you like and subscribe. And if you got a second, check out this other video I got right here.